Ladies and gentlemen, Justice of the Supreme Court of the State of Connecticut. You may be seated. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Supreme Court courtroom as we celebrate Law Day 2013. It's entirely fitting that we're here today to recognize this year's theme of realizing the dream of equality for all. In fact, I think it's fair to say that the 2013 day theme goes to the heart of what our court system is all about, which is access to justice for all. This is regardless of whether you worship in a synagogue, in a cathedral, or in a mosque. In short, when you go to court in America, you are entering with the expectation of justice for all. It is part of the social compact of our courts that we have with anyone entering our doors, and we must ensure that we uphold our end of the bargain if this great democracy is to survive. More than ever, our courts must be guided by the rule of law and unafraid to make rulings that run counter to public opinion, especially when discrimination or harassment is involved. Courts, however, are only one part of the answer. Education is another important component to achieving progress and of equality for all, which leads me to the privilege of introducing today's honoree. The Muslim Coalition of Connecticut is responsible for educational and outreach efforts that seek to promote shared values of mutual respect and social responsibility. I would urge you to view its website, where you'll see a full menu of activities in the community: Habitat for Humanity, shelter serve dates, and a walk against hunger, to name just a few. It also has a very active speakers bureau, and the coalition just recently spent the morning with a group of our judicial branch employees presenting a program that was extremely well received. It goes without saying the positive contributions that this group makes to its community and the entire state, and it is through efforts such as these that a crucial dialogue in this state and country is elevated to a level where a productive exchange of ideas and culture can thrive. In sum, our courts are here to make sure equal rights are protected, and we will do that. We are bolstered, however, by the initiatives and hard work of community groups such as our honoree today that seek to break down barriers through respect for one another and the belief that the rule of law is alive and well in the United States. It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker and Coalition Vice President, Attorney Rafai Arafin. For those of you who don't know Attorney Arafin, he currently serves as the Assistant Imam of the Islamic Association of Greater Hartford. He also spends his time volunteering for Civics First and organizing youth activities at the mosque. Attorney Arafin is a litigation attorney at Trandowski and Allen. Attorney Arafin.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you for this great honor. I greet you all with the greetings of peace and blessings of God on all of you. I'm deeply honored and privileged to speak at the Connecticut Supreme Court, as intimidating as this room is. Usually there is a light that's blinking, but fortunately today that's been turned off. The attorneys in the room know how it gradually turns from white to yellow and then ultimately becomes red. So I feel very liberated being able to speak openly. But my fellow Connecticuters, my fellow attorneys, and my fellow Americans, I'm also deeply proud. I stand before all of you this morning as a product of an American dream of equality. The child of an immigrant from Bangladesh and an immigrant from Guyana, and a marriage that could only take place in New York City. I stand before you as a member of We the People, and in the words of President Lincoln, an inheritor of the proposition to which our nation is dedicated. This dream of equality, which remains elusive, is long in the making. This year we mark the 150th anniversary of the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. 100 years later, in 1963, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood before the Lincoln Memorial, calling for a vision of equality for all. Dr. King was not the very first to call for equality and justice for all, though he was one of the most important of its voices. God revealed in the Quran, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most beneficent, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. God stated in the Quran, O mankind, behold, we have created you out of a single male and a single female. And we have made you into nations and tribes so that you might get to know one another. Verily the noblest of you in the sight of God is the one who is the most deeply conscious of Him. Behold, God is all-knowing, all-aware. God tells us in the Quran that He endowed each and every human being with dignity, with inherent dignity in their person and in their soul. God challenges us in the scripture, and not only the Muslim scriptures, but all scriptures, to look beyond stereotypes to see people with their God-endowed dignity. It is a message that the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut has taken to heart. This year we served thousands of meals at Mercy Shelter here in Hartford, distributed hundreds of towels and socks to the homeless, raised thousands of dollars for the hungry, assisted for days at Habitat for Humanity. I feel like Marco Rubio now with the water. Okay, now that we've been sidetracked. And assisting for days at Habitat for Humanity. We've also taken a stance unequivocally, and on a serious note, we've also taken a very serious stance against all forms of terrorism unequivocally. By denouncing terrorism within our community, we organized the state interfaith gathering entitled United in Peace, Healing with Hope on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, which drew over 1,000 people from all walks of life, as well as mosque open houses throughout the state. It was an unprecedented effort in the state of Connecticut. More recently, the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut has taken a very strong stance against the heinous loss of life at the Boston Marathon. We have also endeavored to highlight various social issues of common concern, including healthcare, domestic violence, the environment, and working with law enforcement in order to foster safer communities. As a result, we have earned the praise from both the Connecticut legislature as well as Governor Malloy and now the state of Connecticut judicial branch. The Muslim Coalition of Connecticut shares that dream of equality under the law for all. Yet at this very moment, while the Connecticut judicial branch and the Supreme Court honors the Muslim Coalition, there are 32 states in which 92 bills have been introduced directed at preventing what paranoid lawmakers call creeping Sharia law. It's always creeping for some reason. Creeping Sharia law. Over the past 2 years, 6 states have enacted laws that directly prevent Muslims from practicing Sharia, which covers how Muslims pray, how they eat, and how they practice and carry out their religious worship. Why these states have any compelling state interest in policing how Muslims practice their religion is beyond me. What does make sense to me is that the charge against Sharia is well funded by attorney David Yarushalmi, who has amassed a chest of $42 million to lobby legislatures across the country to prevent this creeping Sharia. The stated mission of this nonprofit law firm, and I'll quote for you what it is to fight for faith and freedom by advancing and defending America's Judeo-Christian heritage and moral foundation. Hatred and xenophobia always comes from a place of ignorance. It always has. Little do Islamophobes realize that Muslims have been part of the fabric of the United States ever since the time of this nation's inception. When Jefferson and James Madison first proposed the Virginia Statute on religious freedom, which later formed the basis for which the First Amendment is modeled after, Patrick Henry and some others wanted to substitute the words Jesus Christ for Almighty God in the opening passage. But that message never entered into the text because it was overwhelmingly voted against by many, including President George Washington. Jefferson later wrote that the representatives wanted the law to include within its mantle of protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Muslim, the Hindu and the infidel of every denomination. Equality for all, that is what the Founding Fathers intended for us. The freedom of each person to practice his or her religion without tyranny. I think it's fair to state that Thomas Jefferson would be disgusted by today's stereotyping of Muslims. The question many ask is why they should care about Islamophobia. And why should Muslims care about stereotyping of others? Why should we be concerned about the equality and justice of others than our own selves? As Reverend Dr. King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Equality under the law is only meaningful if it extends to all people, however vilified those people may be. In reflecting on the Emancipation Proclamation, I remember the words of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor does a black have any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. Similarly, God states in the Quran that whoever leads a righteous life, whether it be a male or a female, shall attain salvation without the slightest injustice. As Muslims, we are faith-bound to prescribe to basic principles of equality and fairness, which we do carry out by serving our communities. Each of us has our own way of improving lives. I like to believe that I do so by serving my clients, by litigating their cases, and by giving them a voice when they feel helpless. Then there's also my wife, who works closely with the Department of Children and Families as a senior counselor at Wheeler Clinic, helping families get back on track. By doing so, we fulfill not only a civic duty, but also a deeply spiritual one. When President Eisenhower issued the Law Day Proclamation in 1958, he called on us to reflect proudly on the legacy left behind by the Founding Fathers. In that time of fear of communism, he may not have realized that democracy and liberty, however imperfect, would reign throughout the world, from Budapest to Moscow to even Cairo. Connecticut is now the second most unequal state in income in the Union. Connecticut is the second most unequal state in the Union. And our schools remain some of the most unequal in the country, if not the world. The dream still needs to be realized. It still needs to be realized, and it needs to be kept alive if we ever hope for equality to be a reality. While the courts do play a key role in acting as a check against runaway lawmakers, it is ultimately you and I, as citizens, who hold the keys to a free and just and equal society. And it's my sincere hope that this dream will quickly turn into the reality that we all hope for. On behalf of the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut, I'd like to again thank the judicial branch for this wonderful and incredible honor. I'm truly humbled, as well as the other members of the Muslim Coalition, by this great honor. It's truly a privilege to be a part of such a special occasion and to be part of Law Day. And we hope and we pray that we can all together, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, regardless of our faith or our denomination, that we can transform the lives of all people for the better. Thank you all so much for listening, and God bless America.
Thank you very much. I would now like to also thank the members of the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut for your work to educate the public on Islam and Muslims. Would all the members and volunteers who assist the coalition please stand for a moment to be recognized? Thank you very much. I'm now going to ask the board members of the Coalition of Connecticut to come forward to receive the plaque. Read this. In recognition of the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut for educating the public on Islam and Muslims at a time when there is an increase in hate crimes and discrimination in regards to Muslims, for the coalition's leadership in many initiatives successfully embodies this year's Law Day theme, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All. Kim Knox, President-elect of the Connecticut Bar Association, who has graciously accepted our invitation to deliver remarks on behalf of the Bar Associations. Attorney Knox previously served as the CBA's Vice President and Assistant Secretary-Treasurer. She also serves as the Chair, Vice Chair, and Secretary-Treasurer of the Litigation Section, and was a founding co-chair of the Appellate Advocacy Committee and the Appellate Advocacy Institute. Attorney Knox has been a principal in the Hartford law firm Gordon, Shields & Knox since 1989.
Thank you. Good morning, the Honorable Chief Justice, Justices, members of the Court, colleagues, friends, and especially to our honoree, the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut. I am Kimberly Knox, President-elect of the Connecticut Bar Association, and I am deeply honored to be here to speak to you about this year's Law Day theme, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All. As the current American Bar Association President, Laura Bellows, recently noted, Law Day is a day to reflect on and rededicate ourselves to the rule of law and the principles of liberty, justice, and equality. Since 1958, the President of the United States has annually recognized Law Day, and in 1961, Congress passed a joint resolution designating today, May 1, as the official day to celebrate Law Day each year. The promise of equality under the law is what has made the United States a beacon to other nations. It is a pledge clearly set forth in the Declaration of Independence and in the opening words of the preamble of the Constitution, we, the people. It is, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, the proposition to which our nation is dedicated. The year 2013 marks the 150th anniversary of the issuance of President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which marked the beginning of the end of slavery in this country. But here in Connecticut, equality under the law has been a forefront concern of our citizens, and we have been a leader in this regard. In the landmark case of U.S. versus Amistad, there was a movie you may all recall, the district court in 1840 ruled that 54 captive Americans aboard the slave ship, the Amistad, were in fact free people. It is no surprise that equality is a partner to both freedom and justice. In 1963, during the Proclamation Centennial, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial. There's teachings in repetition, I'll tell you. Called upon our nation to live up to the great promise enshrined in its founding documents of equality for all persons. 5 decades later, the inspirational words of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech continue to resonate and challenge all of us to live up to our national ideal of equality under the law. The legacy of the civil rights movement can be seen in the strides that have been made against discrimination based on race, gender, ethnicity, national origin, religion, age, disability, and sexual orientation. This year's Law Day theme, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All, provides us with a new opportunity to explore the movement of for civil and human rights in this country and the impact it has had in promoting the idea of equality under the law. This also provides us with a forum for reflecting on the work that needs to be done in rectifying injustice, eliminating all forms of discrimination, and putting an end to violations of our basic human rights. As Dr. King pointed out in his letter to from the Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Much progress has been made since Lincoln's promise in the half a century since Dr. King delivered his historic speech. Segregation and many other legally tolerated discriminatory practices that were accepted in 1963 would be unimaginable today. However, despite all the gains achieved, there is work to be done. For example, women and minorities remain grossly underrepresented in positions of real power, influence, and leadership. Although women have made strides in achieving equality, inequities and opportunities in pay continue to exist. However, again, I am very proud of Connecticut's legal history in this regard. In 1882, Mary Hall was the first woman to make her application to the Connecticut bar. In opposition to her successful application, it was argued that the law at the time governing the admission of lawyers did not include women. We weren't persons. Chief Justice Park of this Connecticut Supreme Court at 50 Connecticut 131 wrote, "We are not to forget that all statutes are to be construed as far as possible in favor of equality of rights. All restrictions on human liberty, all claims for special privileges, are to be regarded as having the presumption of law against them." This landmark case occurred nearly 40 years before the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote, and it effectively rejected the entire jurisprudence of separate spheres under the law. However, the continued disparity in pay between women lawyers and their male colleagues performing the same exact work remains significant, with women only earning 70 cents on the dollar that their male colleagues earn. And this gender wage gap crosses most professions, trades, and areas of employment. To quote Supreme Court Justice of the United States Ruth Bader Ginsburg in U.S. versus Virginia, "Neither federal nor state government acts compatibly with equal protection when a law or official policy denies to women, simply because they are women, full citizenship stature, equal opportunity to aspire, achieve, participate, and contribute to society based on their individual talents and capacities." On one other issue affecting freedom and equality in today's world is a crisis that we're facing today, both in this country and in this state, with regard to human trafficking. Allow me to digress just for a moment. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons, is a modern-day form of slavery. Worldwide estimates of human trafficking range from 20 to 27 million enslaved individuals. 26% of those are children under the age of 18. The International Labor Organization indicates that 68% are in forced labor exploitation, 22% in forced sexual exploitation, and 10% in state-imposed forced labor. The International Labor Organization estimates that women and girls comprise 55% of all those in forced labor and 98% of those in forced sexual exploitation. While it is a crime under international, federal, and most United States state laws, and it intolerably impacts upon so many people, there were only 3,900 criminal convictions of traffickers in 2011. In closing, as we reflect upon this year's Law Day theme, Realizing the Dream, Equality for All, we celebrate the successes that we have had so far. We celebrate the opportunity for equality and freedom under our laws, but we must never take for granted that equality or freedom has been achieved for all persons. Rather, we have much work to do before we realize a future in which all citizens have the opportunity to realize the dream of liberty and equality. And in that regard, I call on every one of you to continue to pursue equality for all in this state, in your classrooms, in your workplace, in this country. Thank you for this opportunity, and again, my sincere congratulations to the honorees today. Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to recognize the students who have joined us here today. We have students from Medina Academy, which is the state's first full-time Islamic school, which is based in Windsor. And we also have students from Capitol Prep and Bloomfield High School. So I'm going to ask the students to please stand and be recognized this morning. We'll conclude our ceremony, and we invite all of you to join us next door in the museum, which is right back there, for a reception for our honorees. Thank you again all for coming this morning.
All right.